Okay, I think we're ready to go. My name's Louise Walker and I'm Senior Project Manager at CIRIA. Thank you to everyone for joining us for our 4th annual Suds-Strain Suds Champion Awards. I'd just like to say a quick thank you to all our Suds-Strain partners and supporters, without whom events such as today's would not be possible. The running order for this afternoon is as follows. We begin by hearing from 3 previous winners of the Suds Champion Awards, who will share what being a Suds champion means to them. There will be an opportunity to ask questions after their presentations. Then we'll come to the all-important Suds Champion Awards. More on this shortly. First of all, I'd like to do the first of our polls, just a quick one to find out who's joined us today. Thanks, Sarah. So that's great. We've got quite a strong representation from the private sector and local authority. A few people with a general interest in the subject and quite a lot of others, which might represent the ones that we didn't list. But thank you. And just another quick poll now. In your opinion, is Suds delivery improving in terms of multiple benefits? So we're talking beyond just flood risk management and in terms of amenity, biodiversity, water quality and other benefits. Thank you. Yeah, that's interesting. It's variable. And also yes, so we've got 50% for variable, 39% for yes, 3% for no. That's interesting. Okay. Thanks everyone for voting. I'd like to now hand over to our Suds-Strain Project Steering Group Chair, Graham Fairhurst, who is also chairing today's event. Graham is a chartered civil engineer and retired senior local government officer. Graham worked with DEFRA on the Flood and Water Management Act and has been chair of Suds-Strain since its inception.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Louise. I too would like to welcome everyone to this CIRIA Suds-Strain event and to say for my part what a pleasure it is to be involved with it. To understand these awards, it's useful to look back at where Suds has come from and the challenging course it's had in the UK. Having been doing some jigsaw puzzles recently with my grandchildren, I could equate the challenges of those with Suds perhaps, and I might equate Suds, really, the Suds challenge, to trying to put together a 1,000-piece jigsaw without having the box lid with the picture on it. And I have to say, we probably still have a few edge pieces to find yet. The main challenges with Suds have seldom been technical. They have in large part been due to inertia. Established ways of and systems for doing things, institutional to a large degree, as well as scepticism from some key stakeholders. This has meant that the good progress that is at long last now being achieved has been very dependent on Suds ambassadors, people who understand Suds and have a passion for them and what they can do for placemaking and for the built environment and the natural environment. The initiative by CIRIA and Suds-Strain to promote these awards a few years back was therefore a very important step. It's one that's bearing fruit. Everyone who's been involved in the awards process, winners and other nominees, all say that it has increased the profile and credibility of Suds and of Suds practitioners and made it easier to engage with other stakeholders. I'd like to thank everybody involved in the awards process this year. Those at CIRIA who have done all the organising, the judges who have evaluated the nominations and then had the challenging task of shortlisting, everyone who voted, of course, everyone who is now attending, certainly those who've been nominated for an award, last by no means least, the partners and supporters of Suds-Strain. The awards themselves have evolved. The previous time judges were shortlisting, they felt that the task was particularly challenging. in that there were difficult choices to be made between people who had been working in SUDS for a long time, the established, experienced SUDS professionals, and were deserving of awards for their commitment and strategic inputs. And also the up-and-coming people who are making a mark on the sector through their work and energy, and who also were very well deserving of recognition. It's a pleasure, therefore, that a new category of rising star has been created to provide better scope to recognise achievement. Whilst the task of the judges in shortlisting nominations may have been made easier this year by introducing the new category, the workload was no less, because there have been, very encouragingly, a greater number of nominations. I think it's important to remind everyone of the three key aspects that have framed the judges' work in shortlisting. The SUDS champions should inspire, inform, and influence. And the reason for this is that not all of this mountain of inertia has been quarried away yet. And as we know, far from SUDS existing in a self-contained environment, good SUDS are woven into the built environment with multiple stakeholders, placemaking, creating multiple benefits. Trying to explain why surface water drainage is no longer about getting water out of sight as quickly as possible, and that having water in the public realm can be a good thing, still not always easy. Being a SUDS ambassador often means it's necessary to wind back discussion to ensure that the implications of climate change are understood and are relevant to another party who maybe hasn't really understood why SUDS are part and parcel of a bigger picture. Being a champion is to a significant extent about people and other stakeholders, about brokering solutions, including sustainable long-term management of SUDS, and about securing funding. However, lest we be drawn into thinking that it is all about front of house stuff, we of course shouldn't forget that the ability to inspire, inform, and influence can only take place effectively if sound foundations are in place relating to guidance, standards, and software. We also need champions in building the foundations. For myself, as chair of the SUDS-trained PSG and someone who was in at the beginning of SUDS in the UK at the end of the last millennium and a generation ago, it's a real pleasure to be part of the award ceremony and see what it means to those individuals who've been nominated. It was really encouraging to see that nominations and shortlisting reflect excellent work being done in much of the UK, and even more encouraging to see high quality SUDS and nominations from all parts of the UK as well. There can only be one winner in each category, and I should say here and now that all those who've been nominated and who may be disappointed in not receiving the award, they do need to know that they've made a real mark on the sector as judged by their peers. And I definitely hope they will therefore be encouraged in their endeavours going forward. Nominees should also know that the quality of the nominations and of the evidenced work of the nominees as presented to the judges is also of a very high standard. Judges were particularly struck by the high level of experience evidenced even in the rising star category, where candidates could actually be said to have risen. It was, I feel, significant this year that nominations were received from people working with SUDS outside the UK and Ireland. This shows the profile of the awards that's now being achieved, and in fact presents a new challenge of accommodating a broad international dimension. Discussions are taking place as to how this might be accommodated in the future. We now move on to listening from previous award champions about the impact of receiving the award and what that has had on their professional lives. This will be followed by a discussion with speakers who will be happy to answer any questions you have. So please keep your questions coming in the Q&A box, and we'll pick them up in the discussion session. Remember to click the thumbs up to like other attendees' questions. This will help us identify the most popular questions. I'm delighted to be joined by past award winners, Chris C. Tinsley, Ian Titherington, and George Warren. And I would like to now move on to the to those people now. So first of all, I'd like to introduce Chrissy, and we'll be hearing from her as our first champion. Chrissy is a landscape planner at Leicester City Council, trained in architecture, landscape architecture and environmental management. She was a national Chuds champion for 2018-2019. She works for Leicester City Council in the planning department, provides lots of opportunities to work with developers on achieving better external environments in the city. She also designs and runs contracts, no mean task in itself, including wetland creation as part of natural flood management, and also city centre work with highways and conservation. So over to you, Chrissy.
Right, hello, I hope you can hear me. So what being a SUDS champion means to me. Let's see if I can get it to work. Oops, go up one. The big thing for me was credibility. You can bang on all you like about how great SUDS are, but you have the title champion and it changes the way people view you. And I was particularly pleased about the change in, I don't want to be sexist, but a lot of the highway engineers I work with and the director of the Highways Transport and Planning section that I work within. So it really changed the way that I felt and those around me felt about SUDS. And I've been at meetings with major developers where I haven't said that I'm a champion, but higher up people have. And it's a very nice, warm feeling. So let me give some examples of what this credibility really means. So once I became champion, I was invited to national, regional and local fora to give various talks. So I picked some of the cover sheets at random here. The very first one was the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors Conference on Water, fortunately held in the Midlands. And it was wonderful because it was a very, very worthy conference and a lot of slides and a lot of tables and graphs. And I was able to come in and actually give some practical examples of the changes we'd made. And you could feel the audience sort of warming up because instead of this being a theoretical dream or ambition, people in local government, people working for developers, you know, the changes are happening around us. And I'll be quite honest, I use whatever I can to get this story over. The story of SUDS is so obvious, but it can be so fun and we need to change our attitudes about water. So I make no apologies for using my own grandchildren there, showing that water's fun. I've got another grandchild in the bottom right, and using flowers. I'll use whatever it takes because this is a good story. And once people get the message, once they see it can be done, once they find out it doesn't cost more and it's easier to maintain, you're on a winner. So you've got a voice, use it. There's the story about you give a man a fish, you feed him for one day, you teach a man to fish and he's fed forever. And that's what I'm about. I'm about encouraging everybody to just try and do a little bit more wherever they can. So the pictures on the right-hand side are of a place called Centenary Square. And I didn't have to bang heads together. They started out from the basis of let's do good SUDS here, which they did, and it's wonderful. The pictures on the left, that was an article about Jubilee Square. I didn't write the article, Green Blue Urban did. You know, we're getting the word out and I don't have to do it all. If you get others to tell your story for you, it's far more powerful. The bottom picture that looks very wet, one of the highway engineers put me some soakaways in. I don't care if he's slightly patronising me. We get a better scheme, Leicester benefits, and we're starting to change our attitudes and the way we do things. Increase credibility with partners. So the one on the left is some work I've just started doing with our local water company. And it's quite exciting because together we can achieve targets that we both want to achieve. So that little plan shows areas of concern where there are combined drainage, where there is combined drainage and it's causing the water company problems. So I went down to have a look at it, and there's an old Victorian school with a very hard school playground. And we're talking about introducing some rain gardens on the street there. And what a fantastic opportunity to link with that school, to get the kids out to see this. It's going to be tick, tick, tick all the way, we hope. And we get our targets ticked and the water company does. And on the right, this is a project done with the Environment Agency. And it's some on-offline channels, and it's a pond as well. And it's in a flood basin, and there's educational gains. And again, they're ticking their boxes and we're improving our environment. So good suds, everybody can win. Developers, they can change, they can do good stuff. And these are both volume house builders estates. So the one on the left is a company called Morris Homes, just a small local bog standard housing developer, nothing flashy. A lot of this is affordable housing. The urban designer at work and I worked really hard on this, and we've got at-grade drainage going off into the surrounding land, which convincing the highway adoption engineers was hard work, but you know, we've got there. It's a great scheme, and you know, we can take people there and show them. The picture on the right there in the middle, that's the very gentle swale that graded highway at-grade drainage goes into. So, you know, it's hardly there at all, but it's doing a really important job, but actually adds to the amenity. The bottom picture on the left is one of the balancing ponds going in as part of the highway infrastructure scheme. And it's doing all the right things. It's got gentle side slopes, it's got tree planting, it's got the amazing I've forgotten the name of them, the flipper feet inlets to the side. And although there is a concrete inlet and outlet, they're as low key as they can be. So we're starting to have this stuff happen and it be the norm. The picture on the right, I really like. It almost looks like a CGI. It's another housing scheme and it's another at-grade drainage, and that's a swale and it falls down the site, and there's a series of gabion pedestrian footbridges across to get into the open space. But every time we achieve one of these on the ground, we can start to tell other people and say, it is possible, you can do it. And this is something that I am super proud of, but it's, I've got grey hair. I would have had grey hair just by doing this. This is our adoption guidance document. And any moment now, it will finally be on the web. What it's all about is giving developers the confidence that they can talk to us about SUDs, and it won't be the case that one bit of the council likes it and another bit doesn't. We've all got together the very many different disciplines: highway design, highway adoption, property, planning, legal, parks, just anybody you can think of who might have a responsibility for managing land. So we've got the process that they go through, we've got examples of what we'll accept, and all the way through we've had excellent support from the top of Leicester City Council, the mayor and assistant mayors. So, you know, I'm lucky to work in a city that believes in trying out new things and having a great football team, never forget. So finally, job satisfaction. I have been so lucky in that for the last 5 years, I've worked on a programme funded by Leicester and Leicestershire Enterprise Board, which is normally about business and jobs and all the rest of it. And this will lead to business and jobs, because if you can manage the water through the city, you free up the potential to develop land. So if you look at that map in the middle, there's a series of little green words, blocks, whatever titles, and those are all the interventions we've made right through the city. And we felt it was really important to put this interpretation board. This is the final bit of the jigsaw. And what we've been trying to say, it's quite difficult. You do an intervention and people think instantly floodwaters won't gather in that particular instance or that particular area. And what this was all about was saying to people, the water that is here is in a natural flood meadow. It will increase, but we've created some space for it to go, and it will limit the risk to the principal urban area of Leicester. And this makes a difference to you because obviously essential infrastructure is there. And you could be directly affected, even though you might live on a hill in the city. And the final few pictures there on the right, they're just some of the holes of water I've created. The top left is actually flooding at one of my sites. And I want to say that's exactly what it's meant to do. It's meant to sit there and limit the risk to other properties. And if you don't like the picture below, that isn't one of mine, it's the contractor took it. That's great. That's SUDS in action. We should like water. It's important. So finally, just want to say thank you to CIRIA and all the support they've given me. And thank you for the chance to once again bang on about SUDS. That's me.
Thanks, Chrissy. That was great. I noticed that there was no questions come forward yet, so please come forward with some questions and we'll pick them up in the discussion shortly. And also remember to click the thumbs up when you do see other attendees' questions so we can start to prioritise if we have to. I'm now going to move to Ian and Ian Titherington, who is Land Drainage Officer at Cardiff City Council. Ian has delivered a high-profile SUDS schemes in his role as SUDS approval body at Cardiff. He was project coordinator and instigator of the SUDS Awards 2020 winning project, Greener Grangetown, and SUDS Drain champion himself of 2019. So Ian, over to you. We're looking forward to your presentation.
Thanks very much, Graham. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you can hear me. I'm not sure you can see me. My computer's having a difficult time this afternoon. I'll do a very quick presentation. Thanks to Chrissy for her words to start with. I'm looking forward to plagiarising her SUDS guide as well, because I've got to write one myself sometime when I got the moment to do so. I'll quickly flick through the slides if I can get them to work. There's a bit of a delay, I'm afraid. Hang on a second, see if I can get the next one to come through, and bear with me a second. A little bit of a delay, I'm afraid. There we are. Right, in 2019, I got 2 SUDS prizes, the SUDS Champion and the arrival of Schedule 3 of the Flood and Water Management Act 2010, which is a bit of a mouthful, which is basically the element that Westminster didn't agree for England, that the Welsh Government did agree for us. So basically, SUDS are now statutory in Wales as of 2.5 years ago. So you have to follow our 6 standards. And hopefully this slide will come up now. The 6 standards are based on the 4 pillars of SUDS, and here we go. Surface water running hydraulic destination, surface water runoff, hydraulic control, water quality, amenity, biodiversity, design of drainage, construction, operation and maintenance. These are 6 statutory standards. So if you want to build any construction in Wales over a certain size where more than 100 square meters of the runoff characteristics change, you need SUDS approval, the same as planning approval, but separate from planning. If you don't get SUDS approval, you can't build. So it's a very strong piece of legislation. It's a very simple message: no SAB approval, no construction, which doesn't make me altogether popular with some in the industry, mostly internal, I think, as much as external. But it's a very powerful tool and a very, very important piece of legislation. Moving on to the next slide. There we are. I've gone through briefly what has been SUDS Drain Champion meant to me and done for me. It has given me credibility, as my colleague mentioned earlier, as a SAB officer. You don't always have credibility in local government as a drainage engineer. You're often looked down upon. There aren't many of us left. So winning that award did give me credibility with industry. So allowed me to travel and meet colleagues across Europe. I've done a lot of presentations across the UK and Europe. That's been a wonderful opportunity, and I learn a lot from other colleagues as well. So I turned Vice UK Group's advising on surface water management. I was advising recently Westminster Government Environment Scrutiny Committee on these issues, and work with CIWEM and the IC. It's a wonderful opportunity to meet some very clever people and pretend to be as clever as them. Invites to make provocative presentations. I won't be provocative today. I'll be on my best behaviour. I've got my team shirt on and everything. You can be provocative. Sometimes you have to challenge organisations, challenge individuals to make SUDS move forward in a constructive way, but you've got to give as good as you get, because too many people have been knocking back SUDS for too long on false pretenses. And really, as a SUDS champion, it's my role to challenge those false ideas and move forward. I've had opportunities to speak to students about SUDS. I've been invited to universities to talk to students, quite often planning and geography students, not many engineering. I'm hoping to break the duck on that this autumn, because I want to convince more civil engineers to get into drainage engineering, because there's a chronic shortage. I've been able to help and develop new SUDS products. I've worked with a few companies to develop their new products, to give them ideas on maintenance and on construction, what the likely delivery times will be, all these issues that product suppliers need. It's important to have that relationship with them. I'm advising research students on future SUDS challenges. I'm doing that currently with one or two students who approach me. I never say no, because it's an opportunity to help some very, very clever people who are hopefully going to develop new products and new ideas for the SUDS industry. I spend a lot of time inspiring people of all ages from the SUDS family. I meet some very, very clever people, like at events today, like across the industry, a lot of boffins from university, a lot of people delivering products, a lot of designers. It's a wonderful opportunity to meet these people and pretend to be as clever as them, if I can keep a straight face long enough. It's all very well, as you say, but what difference is it making in Cardiff is often a question I get, because I'll often go on about Green at Grangetown, which won many awards. But in the city centre, currently, these are two very large rain gardens in one of the busiest streets of Cardiff, between the new BBC studios and the new tax offices. The soil levels are slightly elevated because we've got rugby going on at the moment, and these streets are thronging with people, hopefully soon again, with rugby internationals. So these are being constructed on every major scheme in Cardiff in the city centre. SUDS are going in. So in 2 years' time, the city is going to look very, very different, much greener, much cleaner, much more enjoyable environment, I hope. As I say, the vegetation goes in the autumn. We plant in the autumn to protect it from any summer dry weather, to ensure that the actual vegetation is more long lasting and less maintenance. So I'll try and get on to the next page now. Right, this is a big hole in the ground, doesn't look much. It's the bottom of an attenuation tank linked to our largest rain garden to date going in the city centre. It's a 10 by 20 metre rain garden bioretention system, which is taking water off thousands of square metres of adopted highway as part of the Centre for Student Life Development in Cardiff. And we had lots and lots of input from university, from local action groups, from the councillors, and we're using a piece of vacant parkland to create a very, very large landscaped rain garden with a lot of science and education to explain how these systems work. At the moment, we've got 3 or 4 large construction sites in the city centre, all using SUDS. That's just with the adopted highway. There are numerous private developments all having to do the same, because by law, unless they do it, they can't build. So there will be a gradual transformation across the city, including green roofs, which are currently being installed in a few places in the city centre at the moment. So it is a gradual process in Wales. We're unique. We have this SUDS legislation, and in Cardiff, we're certainly making the most of it in terms of retrofitting in the city centre. So I'll try and get on to the next slide. Bear with me a second. Yeah, it's something old. This is just going back to Green at Grangetown. This is currently what one of the larger rain gardens look like, with a concrete, with a granite rail around the centre, so all the water can spring out. We always try and design on the surface, try and keep the water as close to the surface as possible, because that allows you to convey, to treat and attenuate. And the further you go down the ground, the more expensive it gets. So basically, we're trying to get developers on board and having something like the SUDS champion people listen to me more than a few seconds as they used to try and understand what we're trying to achieve. As you say, that's an old one that's been put in. The next picture is a development that is currently going out to tender. It's had some publicity. It's called the Canal Quarter in Cardiff. That's a dock feeder on the right, not really a canal. It's a Victorian feeder system for Cardiff docks from the River Taff. It goes all the way through the city centre. It's all been covered over in concrete. I came up with a mad idea to take off about 80 metres of the concrete and create a canal quarter. And Atkins have been working on this one and come up with some brilliant designs. A lot of rain gardens, a lot of tree systems, suds incorporated in everything. We've even got floating vegetation on to create new habitats that previously weren't there. It's all about multi-benefits. It's all about delivering multi-benefits in an urban environment and people experiencing the before and after of suds, which is a wonderful thing. As an engineer, you don't always have the opportunity as a drainage engineer to get positive feedback on your work because you always bury it. With suds, it's always on the surface. So that's always a positive when it comes to doing this work. And the final slide, bear with me a second. Just a few statements. Good suds is simply about better design. It's not more expensive. It's done well. It's usually cheaper. It's about better design. It's about delivering more bang for your buck when it comes to multi-benefits. The best suds deliver the very, very best design. There's absolutely no two ways about that. You get so much more for your money. And being a Suds Suds champion has and continues to help me to deliver better suds. So a little bit in Welsh. Diolch yn fawr iawn I Sustring. Thank you very much to Sustring.
Thank you, Ian. Thanks for that. Brilliant and understated as ever. And this is from someone who's just more than a little bit clever in suds, Ian. You talked about clever people, but you are amongst the cleverest. Okay, now move on to the next speaker. I'm delighted to introduce last year's Suds Drain champion, who is the itinerant George Warren, who is now Integrated Water Management Lead at Anglian Water. George recently joined Anglian as their Integrated Water Management Lead. He's previously worked within the climate change team in the Greater London Authority, where he focused on policy writing and the promotion of retrofit suds across London. He's been involved in several award-winning projects ranging from the more conceptual pieces to large regeneration projects, and has previously chaired the London Drainage Engineering Engineers Group, LODEG, and the Association of Suds Authorities, ASA, reference group. So welcome, George, with your new hat on. Look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you very much. I failed to put a hat on. In fairness, I refuse to take off my crown. I think the virtual crown is remaining. Thank you very much, and how lovely it was to hear from predecessors. Ian, I particularly liked the shot of you in the sauna. It felt like you said you're wondering whether your camera was on. It certainly looked like you're in a sauna environment there. But yeah, let me proceed and see if I can get some slides up. Right, it feels as though right. So when I was crowned Suds champion, as I was sat in my garden last year, I put this on social media, and friends of mine came back going, I have no idea what you've won, but have you been at some sort of phone party? Because that's not particularly COVID friendly. I kind of explained that that wasn't the case. They said, okay, well, what is this, like some sort of washing up award? What's this all about? Those of them that knew that I was something to do with environment thought that it was more to do with something like this. And sadly, those that were maybe more familiar with engineering went, oh, I know what suds are. It's, you know, basins like this, right? Frankly, what I've actually spent the last year doing is convincing people that actually suds, you will not see good suds. You shouldn't actually see them as suds. You will see them as good landscape, good public realm. And that's the beauty of them, that actually they should be there as part of it. I think it's really important that we explain them each time and point out that what they're doing, and this is landscape is working harder for us all as part of climate change adaptation. But actually, I think good suds sit there. And for those that aren't necessarily interested in drainage, I know, I can't believe it myself, Ian, you can't believe that people might not be interested in drainage. But for those that aren't, they see it as just good landscaping. As Graham alluded to, I've actually moved companies during this time. I was awarded it in 2020. It's not a great year for many people, one that many want to forget. I didn't get invited to go across Europe, as I wasn't allowed to leave in that respect. And my working environment has pretty much been this room ever since. So it's been somewhat curtailed in that respect, but what it has meant is actually I've moved over to a water company in that time. I just thought I'd put this up because it kind of gives, you know, a feel for the fact that actually there's so many different parts of the industry that are involved. The survey that was done earlier on this just shows that all the different elements, you know, different people involved. And I'm not a landscape engineer, architect. I'm an engineer, so I suppose I haven't got into that field, and they are key to this. I'm not a planner either, and they're really key on this front. But it gives you an idea of, I guess, my career trajectories to date. And I feel like actually in my current role, there's huge potential to move things forward as well. But one thing I wanted to get across now, being as such, quite often you're alone in this within your organisation, and you are talking about suds, and Chrissy points out, right, you know, people may have previously seen you as being the eccentric one that bangs on about these things called suds the whole time, and everyone just has to grin and bear it around you and says, yeah, I'm sure you're doing a great thing, but we've got this and that to deliver. So that can be quite demoralising sometimes internally. What's nice about SUSTRAIN is that you get amongst your peers that also understand suds, and when you get an award like this, it actually gives them almost a stamp of approval, which is very useful internally to say, okay, I know I keep on banging on about this, but people say I kind of know what I'm talking about. I have to admit, I would, you know, I'm with Ian on this. I feel somewhat humbled because there's a lot of people across the industry who know far more than I in that regard. I suppose what I'm trying to do is more the inspiring and influencing. Others are very good at the informing side. But I put this slide up because a lot of the time you're faced with people coming out with that classic thing of, yeah, I know suds, and they'll come up with some outrageous fact. And those facts tend to be to try and back up their argument. I came across one the other day. You know, I know suds. I mean, they have a 16% up, you know, increase in land take, don't they, compared to conventional drainage? You think, right, okay. Yes, if you're retrofitting it in terms of, you know, you haven't necessarily incorporated it into your design, but, you know, there's a lot of that can be used as public open space. You need to make the green infrastructure do more. Is the wrong way of looking at it. And there's loads of facts that are thrown around the place, some of which are correct, but just taken out of context, and some of which are just blatantly just not true. And I think by having that sort of that suds champion crown, shall we say, allows me to, I suppose, stick my head above the parapet and say, look, do you know what, actually, mate, I'm not sure that's entirely correct, which has been invaluable, I have to admit, and I hope others will use that going forward. I would say that I've been lecturing, but lecturing from your spare bedroom is a very weird thing to students. Fortunately, they are all required to keep their cameras on so you can see whether they're falling asleep or not. But I subjected some master's students at UCL to, yes, an hour long of my dulcet tones around suds as part of their MSc on urban flooding and drainage. And I was amazed by their understanding of it all. The questions were just phenomenal. And the follow-up emails from them asking about this and that was fantastic, I have to admit. And it's really, I feel really privileged to have been given this opportunity to speak to them, and I hope that it continues. And I would encourage those in the industry to get out there and offer your services to speak about these things. I was fortunate that they approached me, but I think that students need to hear from the professions, and I would approach your local universities to offer these services, because it's a great opportunity, and you get some completely left field questions which get you thinking, I have to admit. I'm going to now indulge myself in speaking about one of my favourite projects, if I may. And this is about trying to promote small little bits of suds, small suds. You know, Sue probably started this down talking about nibbling back in the day. I think this is, you know, really key. Look, you know, for a city like London, where I used to work, long gone are the days where these large surface water schemes are available to try and prevent flooding. And actually, the sort of solutions that are available to us were these small little interventions incorporated as part of cycle improvements, road safety schemes, what have you. But individually, they add a bit of benefit, but actually when you do them cumulatively across an area, that's when you really start to see it. Unfortunately, you don't necessarily deliver them all at once. You deliver them as and when the opportunities arise, which means that previously you haven't been able to get that funding. And a piece of work that we did as a partnership, so this involved local authorities across London, Thames Water, the Environment Agency, Greater London Authority, and Arcadis were consultants on board, and I've probably forgotten some there. Apologies for those that I have. We all got together and said, right, let's actually make this work. Let's show the benefits of these interventions when delivered at a wider scale, and show that actually, you know, we can actually calculate those benefits and be able to release that money. What we've actually shown is the fact that if you prioritize and you optimize that through some modeling, actually you can pinpoint the key areas to be able to deliver this. So what we found is that 5% of the top 5% of SUDs were actually delivering over 60% of the benefits. So rather than delivering them everywhere and anywhere, because quite frankly, we can do that, and that is great to do. But if we've got a limited budget, actually understanding where the greatest benefits are, where the greatest location for flood risk benefits, I should say, that means that we actually can start drawing down that money far easier. And what this has led to actually is we're working, I say we, the royal we here, others are now currently working on developing that methodology now for changes to FCRM flood risk funding. Now, the other thing we did was actually quantify the other benefits associated with stuff using BEST, delivered by Syria, I might add, and you know, showing some of the other benefits far outweigh the flooding. But we're so hell bent on the fact that SUDS is a flood risk component, and there's also quite a lot of money around flood risk. Can we start drawing down on that? I think actually, although it's, you know, it's pretty tragic what's happened this week in London with some of the surface water flooding, and I take my hat off to those that are dealing with it right now and the communities that are badly affected. What this might actually mean is that it's brought to the fore. You know, all I'm seeing in terms of tweets from people is, you know, from the public is, why are we paving over driveways? Why aren't we putting in rain gardens and the likes? And you think, sadly, these events are needed to happen in order to raise the profile of the need to start managing surface water in this manner. Hopefully this will lead to better things in that respect in terms of the way in which things move forward. We were fortunate, we did the other week receive an award as part of the Flooding Coast Excellence Awards for, it was the Surface Water Project winner for the year, which is huge from our respect, as it's the Environment Agency that hold the key to that FCRM process. We think that that's going to help in terms of trying to raise this profile and get some changes to that method, that flooding partnership method. A little other thing, because I've joined a water company, it also shows some huge benefits in terms of relieving capacity for growth, more than what I think anyone assumed that it would be the case. And so that's going to be really interesting going forward, because I think water companies play a really key role in this as part of the wider mix, both with the councils and the Environment Agency in that respect. So I've mentioned the fact that I've moved to a water company, and the thing I'm tasked with is trying to promote integrated water management. So SUDS are a really large part of that, but it's also looking at that wider water cycle and how we can cope with the increased population, the growth that's expected, and the impacts of climate change, and understandably the reductions in abstraction licensing to protect the environment. So effectively, if we carry on as we could currently do in terms of using water, it's an increase of demand, but a decrease in supply. And it's looking at how we can utilise SUDS as part of that in terms of surface water harvesting, stormwater harvesting, but also rainwater harvesting, grey water reuse, potentially using treated sewage effluent and black water recycling ostensibly, but how that can form part of that community as well, so that people have a better understanding of their use of water and the management of it. My son turned to me the other day and asked, is that seriously drinking water in our toilet? And I said, yeah, it is. And he's like, why don't we use the rain that's falling on our garden for it? And I wanted to just package him up and take him with me to every meeting that I go to, because he gets it and he's only 4. Why are we still thinking that this is the right way to do it? So this is actually, this is using the Design with Water framework that we're working on with ARUP at the minute, around this water smart communities piece. So we're looking to put an Ofwat Innovation Fund bid into the round 2 around this piece, the whole wider angle. It's, you know, both in terms of the social science angle, but also in terms of how do we make this, you know, the whole sort of non-potable water network, for instance, kind of business as usual. How do we get these developments to start installing these things as usual? How do we have SUDS as part of that to feed that non-potable water network? So watch this space in that regard. But I suppose going back to the question, what does it mean to me? I was truth be told, it meant the world to me to receive that back last year. It made me feel as though I wasn't just speaking into the abyss and bothering everyone about SUDS. It actually meant it made me feel as though I was making an impact. Hopefully throughout this year, and I will continue to hopefully inspire people on this, and hopefully I've influenced change within London and now hopefully in the Anglian region going forward. And I guess, you know, I've looked at the shortlist. In fact, I was involved in the panel, and there was some amazing people put forward for it that I sadly didn't even get onto the shortlist. But I mean, all of you are winners, like genuinely. You're all doing some fantastic things, and it's really lovely to read about the great work that's going on. And I wish you all well now with regards to the votes and the results. So that's probably me done.
Can I just thank you, George, for that? That was super, and particularly like the last bit as well. Louise has got something to say now about some more polls.
Yeah, thanks to all the speakers, they're great. It's lovely to hear that being a Sustained champion does make a difference, and we are going to wrestle that crown off you, George. I'm sorry, it's just how it is. Yeah, so a couple of audience polls coming now. The first is, in your opinion, what is going to help most for the future of SUDS delivery? More training, more guidance, or stronger regulation? Stronger regulation. That's interesting. I think we probably predicted that, but yeah, thank you everyone for voting. We can feed that back to the powers that be as well. And then another quick poll before we go to some Q&A with our speakers, just to help us think. So where are you seeing the most examples of good SUDS? So those that are providing multiple benefits, in which of these areas? Thanks, Sarah. That's amazing. Yes, that's what we said in the discussion before the awards today, that we felt that retrofitting was doing well. So thank you everyone for those. That's some interesting input. We'll now move on to the Q&A. If I could invite Chrissy, Ian and George to join us on webcam. Shall I hand back to you, Graham? We've got quite a few.
Yeah, thanks, Louise.
Could I just point out, sorry, Graham, a couple of questions have been moved to answered in error. So if we can just have a look at.
Okay, if you can sort of help me through that.
I will,
yeah. A quick look at the questions that have appeared. One of them is just a request for Chris's adoption stuff when it comes out. So that one's a fairly easy one to answer, I think. Okay, can I just reiterate that last poll, which I thought is really quite telling in its own way, that retrofitting, which as an engineer, I would say is absolutely the hardest form of SUDS in trying to fit something into an established built environment, is actually proving to be more successful than even delivering SUDS on greenfield new residential development. It does show that we do need some more levers and platforms on which to stand and use those levers, I think, to get SUDS into new development. Yes. Okay. The first question that I picked up was it was addressed to Chrissy. What's the biggest driver or motivator for people installing SUDS?
I think it's case studies. I think it's local case studies. So if people can see something that looks good, and for example, in the city, we've got Mill Lane, which goes right through the middle of De Montfort University in the city centre, and it is retrofit SUDS, and it's a series of interlinked terrain gardens, but it looks absolutely amazing. So already another university has come and said, can we have a Mill Lane? And I've said, no, you have the thing that's bespoke to you. Mill Lane worked for Mill Lane. But, you know, people still see that. And when they find out it's SUDS, and when I talk to students, they often don't realise, you know, that really starts to make people change their views. When they can see that SUDS has actually added value and, you know, it hasn't cost loads of money. So you've got to remember things like time and money. But if you can get people to be excited about the concept and see that they could really make a place extra special because of the way they manage their surface water, you know, that's when you really get a change.
There was a little supplementary as well, Chrissy, and is that, do you think that's changed over time in your experience?
I think things are changing, and I was telling somebody earlier about that light bulb moment that happens when people suddenly see that creating a balancing pond in a housing area and labelling it public open space and putting railings around it, that is wrong. And the engineer who designed that, who I had many arguments with, he's got it now. He realises that a different design could have created a positive open space, and the children in that area could have enjoyed it, the families could have enjoyed it. And when you realise that as an engineer, he could have made that difference, you know, that's when you see the changes. And I think it is changing. I think people are seeing the potential, seeing the possibilities. And, you know, engineers are brilliant people and they've got really clever brains. Let's give them the chance to be creative.
Thanks, Chrissy. Joe Bradley has put a couple of questions up, good as ever, Joe, thank you. The first one to George. George, do you think that the requirement for biodiversity net gain may help to press for vegetative SUDS in the future?
Can I do a single word answer? Yes. Is that sufficient? Yeah, I think it will have a major impact, actually. And I think we're all, you know, there's lots of talk across the water industry and beyond around the impacts of biodiversity net gain, and not seen as a deterrent or an issue. It's more of an opportunity. And I think there's, you know, I think if truth be told, there's a lot of people that have to get their head around it, who previously weren't necessarily clued up on that side of things. But I think that it has a great opportunity to push it beyond. I don't know if others, I don't know necessarily whether biodiversity net gain is necessarily my speciality in that respect. I would normally turn to the likes of Joe Bradley and the likes, but, you know, she asked the question. So, Chrissy, I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that.
Say that I've always worked really closely with the ecologist at work, and you know, together we've been a fairly determined front. She's the one that goes in being very, very challenging, and I come along and say, and I think we can do it. But you know, she knows all about biodiversity net gain. They get excited about it, and they're also supporting my story through the stories they're telling.
And I think Peter Holt has just chucked in a supplementary question to add to that around nutrient neutrality, and I think that also adds to it. I think he's absolutely right, and that is certainly a large conversation that's occurring within the water industry right now.
Okay, Joe's other question is about the design and construction guide, which only allows water companies to adopt features that can be called sewers. And not associated with highways, drainage and landscape. This is for George, but I'd be interested in Chris's and Ian's angle on this as well. Does George think that there is a risk that DCG will fragment SUDS with different parts being adopted by different authorities?
Joe,
will this cause more confusion around maintenance and operation?
It's my 4th week, Joe, in a water company. God, jeez. Now I have to represent the water industry in that respect. I think if I were to put my old hat on, I would say there are issues with it, but it is a start of a 10, isn't it? It does allow for water companies to part adopt, or rather, I say allow, probably force to a certain degree. I think certainly what I'm seeing within Anglian Water is that we're going to have to change the way in which we look at draining land. And so I think in terms of what we adopt and what we don't adopt, in a way, it's going to have to be taken on a case-by-case basis. The DCG does lay down where, if you fulfil these requirements, we will adopt. But we all know that there's rules out there around everything about, fulfill the rules, and it gets to an adoption process. It doesn't necessarily lead to the best outcomes. So you were better off working in partnership with one another to find out the best solution. Now, I think that we as an industry, as water companies, need to seriously look at the maintenance side of things, what we're good at and what we're not good at. And I think there's a real risk involved in the adoption of above ground elements sometimes. And that's what the concern is that I'm hearing internally. And so how do you get across those elements? So I think, yes, as it currently stands, I think there is probably some problems that, with regards to the fragmented approach to maintenance. But I think what it does do is allow for that conversation to start. And I would encourage you to start having the conversation with the water company then about those individual elements, because I think you'll end up with a better solution than just trying to adhere to DCG.
Could I just ask Ian and Chrissy what they feel on that point?
Well, from my point of view, we are working with our local water company. They're not Anglian, and but it's early days, and we're coming at it from a whole new angle, with them actually starting from the angle of what other benefits can we get. And yeah, we're doing these pilot projects. So let's hope we get them right and we can do more together. At the moment, it's very positive.
Ian?
Not really relevant in Wales because of the SUD standards, of course, supersedes in relation to that sort of legislation. So the relationship we have with, saying, Welsh Water in Cardiff is a very constructive one, because basically they've got to meet their AMP standards, as all water companies do. And we got our SUD standards, and we've got all the powers, and they've got all the spend. So what I try and do as an engineer is line up where the priorities cross for a certain community, for a certain area. I'll work with Welsh Water to remove a lot of water from the combined network, so they create capacity for new housing development for the foul network. And at the same time, the community gets an uplift in terms of retrofit. So where you get those cross interests, you try and work with each other and say, look, this is what we're going to do. What are your priorities? So that sort of relationship, you have to have a constructive relationship with the water company, because at the end of the day, we've got the same customers. And as a public body, that's our responsibility. And as a private monopoly, I think that's the water company's responsibility as well.
Without pushing people towards other auditoriums to find out about this, I know that one of the shortlisted finalists was recently, and in fact about a couple of hours ago, running a seminar about the DCG, Mr. Coombs, and in fact there were people on that from water companies giving their side of it. The other thing that I suppose is worth mentioning is the fact that Scotland have had quite a different setup for a little while in terms of the relationship around adoption of drainage features with their water company. I suppose we should bear in mind and have a look as to what's happened there, because that's been running for a few years, and obviously Julie, I'm sure if given the opportunity, would give her tuppence worth at this point. But yeah, I think we're starting on this journey, but let's have the conversation, start the conversations, work with the water company. I wouldn't keep them at arm's length at this point.
I'm looking for some help from Louise here. Louise, there was a question which I can't now find, which had got a lot of interest from Katie. Can you?
Yes, it's from Katie Morgans. It's says delivering SUDS through a two-tiered authority has challenges that are perhaps not there at unitary level. Are there any successful examples of SUDS delivered through the planning process at district level?
I think I accidentally lost it. My apologies. I jumped in way too soon. I work with county a bit, and there's several examples in Leicestershire, but the one that's really worth looking at is Grangewood Manor in Blaby, and it's a Taylor Wimpey scheme. And in fact, Taylor Wimpey in Leicestershire, you know, they're doing some quite good work. So there are good examples, but I would totally agree that it's harder in two-tier, and it does depend on the attitude of your county council.
Ian, not relevant for you, is it?
No, if I was going to use an example, I'd probably use Bronwyn Bunting down in Kent in South East England, and what she's doing to try and coordinate between the different authorities and an overall perception of how to do SUDS over several authorities. She's the woman I go to for advice on that, because she really is straight talking, very, very knowledgeable, and someone who's done so much work to pull authorities together to have continuity. So certainly Bronwyn's the one I go to.
Yeah.
Ian, can I ask you now, what lessons do you think England can learn from the implementation of TABs in Wales?
Employ more drainage engineers, number one.
Landscape architect.
We're chronically short, and we're struggling in that area. We're learning fast, but it's a bit of a firefight at times. I think documentation, having more standardized documentation. We've got 22 unitary authorities and probably 22 versions of SUDS. I think it's very difficult for developers. And I think a personal point, I don't think we spend enough time talking to contractors. We come up with these wonderful ideas and wonderful designs, and then we ask people to build them. I think there needs to be a far more conversation with our civil engineering contractors on how to build these elements of SUDS, because they don't have that background and knowledge. And I think sometimes as an industry, we leave them out of the conversation. We should be bringing them in.
Thanks, Ian. Chrissy, a question which I have distinct views on, but I'd like to run past you is the role of management companies. Do you think they're the right body to manage SUDS?
The answer from me is yes. I know that the arguments against, and I know the arguments for. So I think whether or not you're strongly pro possibly depends on what experience you've had. But we in the city, we've got a very old SUDS scheme now that's nearly 20 years old, which is excellent because you can go and look and see what the problems and issues are. But one of the things that has never been in doubt is that the management company looks after that area a heck of a lot better than we as a city council would be able to do, sadly. So, you know, especially looking at increasing cuts to what we can do through parks, who tend to do most of the soft maintenance. Obviously, if you use a management company, then you put a charge to each house, and that can be a big issue and it can become political. But I certainly think management companies can do a very good job.
Okay.
Made easier if the SUDS design is done in such a way that actually the maintenance is fairly simple. You know, like the best management company in the world will still struggle if the design hasn't considered how it's going to be maintained. And we've seen plenty of examples of good and bad in that respect.
Bronwyn's asked a question. It's addressed to Chrissy, but it's applicable to others, I think. Is the adoption by Leicester Highways or another department? Is the adoption for the whole system, or to the outfall, or just for specific components?
Right. Okay. Yeah, highways adoption have been the hardest people to inspire and inform, as you say. And sadly, often, just as we get a group of highway engineers who do get it and understand the difference it makes, they move on to other jobs. Fortunately, the head of highways gets it and is committed to SUDS. At the moment, it's interesting because all our soft areas are maintained by parks, and highways pay parks to maintain them. So at least we've got those two things working in common. But then there's the point at which something becomes Severn Trent's responsibility. So we've got things we haven't ironed out completely, but having this guide now and having had the agreement and the rubber stamp from our mayor, that's going to give us greater capacity to adopt things and not have the issues of one particular highway adoption engineer not thinking it's a good thing.
Okay, just to elaborate a little bit, does the City Council adopt? And if you do adopt, is it the Highway Department that's adopting, or the Parks Department, or what?
It's the highways adopting. And then we have the conversation with Parks about them managing the soft parts of it on behalf of the highways. But it is highways. And we've got a direct labour force. We've got a strong highways section within the City Council.
Okay, we've got a question from Jess Jeffries, and she says she agrees with Ian that Good Suds is about better design and delivering great places to live. Do you think this is being recognised, and how can we spread the word?
I think it's been recognised where you retrofit, because retrofit's so much easier, so much harder to engineer, but so much easier as a sales pitch, because people know their community, and the before and after response is quite significant. And I think the best people to sell suds in Cardiff are in Grangetown, where the work was done, because they love it, because they realise the transformation of their community and they understand what the multi-benefits are. It's a very hard thing to explain. It's a very easy thing to show on a summer's day when we walk down the streets. I think there's recognition to the point that other communities now want the same. And I think slowly, as these examples roll out across somewhere like Cardiff, people will see it more as the norm rather than an exception. And I want to get to the point where street suds, good street suds design is seen as the norm in an urban environment. And when we get to that point, we're going to start winning the arguments.
Okay, thanks, Ian. That's great. There's a question now to all of you, really. What messages do you have for our rising stars of the Suds world? Take Chrissy first.
I think it's an exciting world out there. I remember somebody saying to me a few years ago, oh, Suds is like mainstream now, you're not having to battle. And what a dream that is. We're still battling all the time and still trying to get the message out. But, I think it is an exciting world for the future. And I don't see any possible alternative to good suds at surface, because we don't have the capacity in our pipe systems to manage the sort of events we have anymore. And they're, extreme weather events, they're happening all the time. There was one where I live here a year ago that was extreme. And I'm currently battling with my local planning authority about why they're not making sure that paving over driveways has to go through a planning process. So I think it's an exciting world. I don't think it's easy yet, but I think gradually we will all realise the good sense of good suds.
George?
I would, okay, I 100% agree with Chrissy on that respect, but I would say pick your language depending on the audience. Some people want to hear about the word suds and they want to, they understand that it's about drainage. Others, actually, you need to pick it on the basis of, the amenity and the wonderful visual aspects associated with it, whereas others might be about the low maintenance aspects about it, the fact that you can spot when blockages occur easily, so you don't end up with. So it's about picking the language and the sort of key benefits depending on the audience. I think that's really key. I think, there is a beauty in just constantly banging on about suds and, being known as that belligerent. I will keep my language myself in that respect, but I think in terms of I guess pitching it in the right frame for the audience, I think that's kind of key going forward.
Thanks, that's great. Ian?
They've just nicked all my best ideas. I think don't be scared about trying new ideas. A lot of suds ideas are you're not going to find in the manual. A lot of the designs we're doing in Cardiff at the moment, I just tell an engineer to go and fill the boots, come up with something new, as long as it works hydraulically and it looks good and it meets standards. Don't be scared to try something new. learn as much as you can, plagiarise as much as you can, and above all, come and work in Wales because we need more of you.
Graham, can I back that up actually in terms of, you know, don't be scared to try stuff. Don't be scared also to ask, you know, other people around the industry's opinion and get them down to have a look. I think the best lesson I had was when Syria, in fact, helped pull together a few experts from across the country, some of which are actually on this have been shortlisted today. You know, and they came down and had a look at some of the stuff we've been delivering in Hammersmith and Fulham. And the one that I learned the most about was the one that actually had the most mistakes, where they tore it apart, somewhat embarrassing, stood there. But actually, I learned so much from their comments about what would be best to do. And so, you know, open yourself up to those conversations, because actually, as an industry, I think we're really welcoming and want to encourage.
Okay. Louise, can you just help me with this last question for George?
Yeah, sure. So I think George has indicated that he'd like to answer the question from Andy.
So I think Andy had a question basically saying the poll has suggested that retrofit seems to be where we're seeing the greatest multiple benefits. But how do we therefore get hold of these new build and major schemes and influence those to encompass? And I think the biggest issue there is that most of the people on this call will only get involved in these developments once the master plan's already been assigned. They're going to that planning point. They might be, you know, you might be as a drainage engineer or landscape architect brought on board, but still they've already worked out what yield they want from that site, you know, the numbers of properties and basically where they want them, and you're coming in to try and fit around that. It almost needs to be right at the outset. We need to be educating them right at that outset, and something that actually is part of this water smart communities we're trying to do. We're actually going to be working with a couple of different developers, so both local authority but also maybe the more commercially driven developers, to understand their processes, to educate throughout. And I mean, but this is a long-term program. We're talking 20 years, you know, because ultimately you're getting to the point where you're trying to spot the sites as they're coming up, influence those decisions in terms of the yield, then understand, you know, in terms of the layout and what you need to consider as part of that, get through the planning, get through to the construction, and then the post-occupancy in terms of how does that get maintained? How do they have their exit strategy from that development? So, you know, I know that people have said this, you know, in the past about it's getting in as early as possible, but I think we've really got to work out how we do get that influence back. That's why actually when the poll came up about whether it's, you know, regulation, I think it's actually training. I think it's about training everyone outside of this, what quite often can be a bit of an echo chamber. You know, we need to get out and start speaking to, you know, Chrissy said, go and speak to RICS. You know, like the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors, you know, that's a different industry, you know, and we've got to be getting the message out to those that are involved at the outset, even, you know, even looking at sites for options. I think that's where the key. I appreciate that. I sort of grabbed that question, but I imagine that my two esteemed colleagues will probably want to chuck their thoughts in.
Just before we finish the session, do Ian and Chrissy want to add anything to that?
No? Thumbs up to George.
No,
Ian?
George has ticked all the boxes. No, I'm happy with that.
Well, I'd like to thank you for you three for the question and answer session and the presentations. It was a really vibrant session. I really enjoyed it myself as chair, and I hope our audience has enjoyed it as well. We're now moving on to the awards themselves, and firstly we start with the experienced SUDS professionals. We're then moving on to a special award just for this year, and finally we move into the Rising Star category. The results of the first and last categories are still in their envelope, so to speak. I don't know who they are. So we're now going to start with the category for the award of the Experienced SUDS Professional, and we have 4 candidates. And the nominees are Peter Coombs, Sue Illman, Julie Walden, and Bridget Woods-Ballard. I'm going to say a little bit about each of them and then ask them individually to say a few words. And we then move on from the first to the second onwards, and at the end we will announce the winner. So first of all, I want to introduce Peter. Peter is EMEA Innovation Manager at Innovise, which develops and provides a range of management, analysis and design software for the water sector and various stakeholders. Peter is nominated by Sama Muhandes, an Associate Director at Project Center Consultancy. Peter's been developing and supporting the users of SUDS drainage software for very many years. He's always been very active in promoting SUDS solutions through courses, conferences in both the UK and overseas, and through webinars reaching out to thousands of practitioners. As a long-standing advocate of SUDS, Peter's experienced the reluctance of key players to engage with SUDS, but has kept on pushing and influencing efforts which have helped to get SUDS in the UK into the position where there is now confidence in them. And I would, as an engineer, like to emphasise that obviously software that is supporting the delivery of SUDS is fundamental. This is what I meant in the introduction about laying good foundations. So Peter's been part of that process. So Peter, I would like to invite you now to say a little bit about your favourite part of the process, really.
Thank you, Graham. And yes, I was initially thinking we were asked to put forward a photograph of our sort of favourite SUDS project or something that kind of influenced us. And I was going through like so many different like great schemes that are kind of coming through nowadays. And I suddenly stepped back thinking, why are we doing all this? And of course, at the end of the day, this is all about the communities and for the long term and putting water at the centre of our designs. And when the Flood and Water Management Act came out in 2010, the EA and DEFRA set up a foundation degree. And that foundation degree was initially run through the University of the West of England. I got involved with lecturing on SUDS for this intake. So all these people you see here were trainee, it was a foundation degree, so they could become flood risk managers. So these are trainee flood risk managers. So as Ian mentioned, you know, we've got a shortage in Wales right now. We had a shortage of flood risk managers in the UK when the Flood and Water Management Act came out. So I took real pride in spending like 6 days lecturing in the second year of their 2-year degree program on SUDS. And I'm so pleased that so many of them are actively working and deserve to be nominated for SUDS champions like 10 years later. So that's, in a nutshell, why that's my favourite photograph.
Thank you for that, Peter. That was nice to hear. Now moving on to the second nominee, Sue Ullman. Sue is a highly capable landscape architect and managing director of the Ilman Young practice. She's past president of the Landscape Institute and is nominated by Bridget Woods Ballard of HR Wallingford. Sue is not afraid of being a powerful lobbyist within the sector and to government. A year as president of the Landscape Institute was used to help embed SUDS processes in the training of landscape architects. Sue is co-author of the SUDS manual and the guide to SUDS in construction. She sits on a number of committees and actively champions SUDS there and is a strong advocate of the national amenity standards for SUDS. She's a frequent speaker at conferences and a provider of training courses to industry and to the water sector generally. She's a regular contributor to Syria Guidance. She has led a lead local flood authority review of the true state of SUDS in planning, which has highlighted the deficiencies in current approaches. Sue is the first female to occupy the role of Master of the Worshipful Company of Paviours and has used this role to reach out across the industry to promote integrated cross-discipline working. So Sue, could you please tell us something about your favourite photograph?
This takes me back to possibly, well, it was the very first retrofit project that we were ever involved in. And this was one that we actually undertook in conjunction with EPG. And for those of you that that know him, Steve Wilson, which I'm sure everybody does. And it was just a massive learning curve from our point of view, particularly in connection with working with the local community and really understanding how to engage with them. And that sort of development of almost one-to-one relationships with people there to get them to understand what this was about and to wish to have something developed in their own front garden, as well as actually changing some of their public open space, which I have to say, if you take this one, it was, basically grass with 3 trees on it, and to turn it into something meaningful for those people. And also, just the sheer ridiculousness of, this was a local authority maintained site. Of course, it was local authority maintained public open space, and how, because they had a term contract, we actually had to design the slopes to actually be compliant with their grass mowing contracts. How all of those things just influence what you do and how you do them. So I have a great affection for it. Went back to see it relatively well, call in every now and then when I happen to be passing. It's not being maintained as well as it might, but goodness me, does it still function well and has it grown? So yeah, lots of nice memories. It was an EA demonstration project, and so it was quite important that it worked and that people could see, one, how it could be done and the costs associated with it and the maintenance associated with it. So it hit quite a lot of boxes, and Steve Wilson and I have gone on to work and train together ever since. So that's probably the best thing about it.
Thanks, Sue. That was a nice scheme. I'm now going to come on to the next nominee, which is Julie Waldron. Julie is Senior Planning Officer, Water and Environment at Edinburgh City Council. And she's nominated by Sean Lovell, Uzwala Fernandez of Atkins, Wendy Campbell, who is Senior Planner at SEPA, and Dawn Lockhead, who is Flood Risk Manager at Scottish Water. Julie has been instrumental in enabling one of Britain's most iconic cities to take a leading role in delivering SUDS, and thereby giving a higher profile to the cause. She's led the work to produce high-quality key documents, such as the Sustainable Rainwater Management Guide. This is an excellent document which can be used as a template by other councils. I have checked that with Julie. She did say that technically it's still a draft in inverted commas document because it's not been fully adopted yet by the political processes. But she was very happy for me to say that it can be used as a template by other councils. She's also produced a document, The Vision for Water Management for Edinburgh. She's a member of CIWEM's SUDS Policy Leadership Group and a frequent speaker at conferences and events, highlighting SUDS roles in placemaking and dealing with the impact of climate change. Julie has a proactive role in training other planners in SUDS and has been instrumental in building and sustaining key relationships with SEPA and Scottish Water to ensure joined-up approaches to planning and development. So, Julie, could you please explain what the image means for you?
Yes, hopefully you can all see me. Basically, this image is about the project that I felt I started to get somewhere. So I'd had been organising the Lothians and Fife SUDS group with SEPA, Scottish Water and Nature Scot for several years, and I hadn't really got anywhere. Sorry, I'm on holiday, so I'm in a public place. I do apologise. And I'm in the caravan site. And so this document allowed me to bring all of this stuff together and actually create a guidance where we could point people. In the process of doing so, we brought all the parts of the council in to work together, just as Chrissy was talking about. Very important to pull everybody with you. But it was also the stepping stone, and it was working with Atkins who brought all their energy and enthusiasm, which really helped, because as a lot of people have said, you tend to be on a bit on your own. And then it was a stepping stone up to the Water Vision document. And the Water Vision was important because we couldn't bring in the projects in the council that had permitted development rights. So the ones that were the ones that were not planning, so the big transport projects, I didn't have anything I could go to the guys with and say, this is council policy. So the Water Vision provided me, sent that through the committees, Transport, Environment, Planning Committee, got that done. Now it's a political document and it's a policy, so they have to follow it. And the Sustainable Rainwater Management Guidance actually gives me the information that will say, when people say, but how do you do it? I say, here it is. So it's about that, as a lot of people have mentioned, it's about working together and getting something that I can actually advertise. So I can use the two documents, I can go out to all the different professional groups, I can talk to the architects, I can talk to all the professional bodies and advertise that we have this. And hopefully by doing that through their professional magazines, we'll actually we get a bit of a sea change. And we've already had a sea change in planning applications. So it's that something finally got things moving. And I think that's why I put it up as my favourite image.
Thank you, Julie. We now come to the fourth nominee, Bridget Woods-Bollard. Bridget is Technical Director at HR Wallingford. She's nominated by Sue Illman of Illman Young Landscape Design Limited, who obviously we've just heard about. Bridget is Principal Author for the SUDS Manual and the Non-Statutory Technical Standards. She's Advisor to the Welsh Government on Welsh SUDS Standards, a Principal Trainer in SUDS Designer for HR Wallingford, and a regular contributor to many advisory groups and project steering groups. She's a technical expert for SUDS research and consultancy projects and supervisor for MSc dissertations. Despite these demanding tasks, Bridget has consistently found time to promote SUDS, and she has passionate commitment to the cause. She's an authoritative and frequent speaker at SUDS conferences and events. Her undaunted enthusiasm, hard work over many years, her eloquence and extensive knowledge of SUDS has earned her respect across the water sector. Bridget, please could you tell us why you selected this montage?
Thanks, Graham. I'm not going to take responsibility for the current non-statutory technical standards for SUDS, so I'll cross that one out of your resume. But perhaps the original version and definitely the recent research on looking at updating them to include multiple benefits. I had to put this together because I wasn't quite sure what image to choose, but this basically sums up my SUDS career in pictures, and it really or really a journey that sort of mirrors to a certain extent that the evolution of SUDS, the profile of SUDS through regulation and through planning policy and in government. I think many pages and probably far too many words. I know definitely in the SUDS manual, far too many words, but most importantly, all this just sums up the contributions of many wonderful people in many fantastic teams, and all of those people with incredibly diverse and really valuable knowledge and skills, who all work together with a real passion and commitment to SUDS. To create these documents, which hopefully, as we talked about earlier, have been the backbone to then lots of other people taking those ideas forward and developing really useful and really locally relevant documents too. Thank you.
Thanks, Bridget. And now we come to the really interesting part. And as voted for by the public and by the SUDS, the Sustrain steering group, the winner is Julie Waldron. Well done. And Julie, I would like to invite you now to say a few words, please.
Oh. Wow. Well, sorry, I have my video on. Oh, hang on. Start my video. There we go. You cannot start your video because the host has disabled it. So I don't think, that's fine. We can talk like that. Well, that's amazing. And I'm absolutely delighted. So yeah, and it's been absolutely wonderful meeting everybody else. I think I'll probably have to thank Sean Lavelle, who started the whole process, and Sean and Luzwala from Atkins teams who just bring so much energy and commitment to our projects. And definitely Wendy Campbell from SEPA. She's always really enthusiastic, and Dawn Lockhead from Scottish Water, because she's always been there to support. She has amazing clarity of thought, and I know that she works extra over the weekends. So it's basically working together as a team, and I'm very much lent on people outside of Edinburgh, so not just within Edinburgh, but people within Edinburgh, our flood team, our flood engineers, as well as people outside of Edinburgh, doing wonderful working as a team. So I will continue to try and inspire people, whether it's using jugs of water poured over sponges or live snails that I've taken into the training room, anything to bring people together to think about SUDS. And I really like Dawn's phrase, whenever one changes the surface of the city, think about where the water goes. And that's what we've all been talking about. That's what we need to continue to do. And that's what I say. And I have been alone. I love the way Chrissy talked about being a bit of a mad person, manic person. That's, yes, with my jugs and my live snails, I thought I was a little bit crazy, but people come to the training, and I think that's the key. So thank you so much. And thank you very much to Syria for organising this and all the organisation behind it. I will head back to my tent as a happy camper. So thank you very much.
Thanks for that, Julie, and congratulations from all of us. Well done.
I want to use live snails in my presentations. Yeah, you have a snail race, you see, and you set them off at the beginning of the presentation, and it brings people into the room.
I see Chrissy has just put something on the congratulations. Well done to another mad person. Okay, now move on to the special award just for this year. And this is an award to someone who has made an outstanding contribution to SUDS over a very long period. Unusually, this person has worked outside the usual institutional framework, and above all, through their knowledge, skilled tactical approaches and influencing skills, has made a major contribution to the position that SUDS in the UK now has. This person's been instrumental in building the foundations and has had a significant role in setting the agenda for enabling SUDS to progress and then delivering that agenda. They have seen how this complicated SUDS jigsaw goes together. All these skills and a sustained amount of hard work have made this person one people instantly think of for SUDS in the UK. This person has not just been a prime mover for SUDS, but in parallel has raised the profile and credibility of the water sector as a key area of activity in the organisation he's worked for a great many years, Syria. It should now be clear who we're talking about, and it gives me great pleasure to announce that the winner of this award for his outstanding contribution to SUDS is Paul Schaffer. I've known Paul as long as we've both been working on SUDS, i.e. several decades. I have to say he's aged or weathered those years rather better than me. I'm sure that everyone in this event today will agree that this award is very well deserved. I don't think anyone else has done more informing, inspiring, and influencing than Paul has. He has immense energy and capacity for work and a huge talent for initiatives, which for the most part work. It was Paul who envisaged Sustrain and created its architecture, which engages all key stakeholders. He has driven the production of the key documents we use, such as the SUDS manual. It was significant, Paul, that when you announced your departure from Syria, a number of people connected with Sustrain simultaneously felt that your contribution should be recognised in this way. We know you will continue your good work in your new position, but hope you will appreciate this recognition now. That's from a good friend as well, Paul. But I know you've got so many friends and contacts in this SUDS network, but I feel, speaking for them all, that this is an award that's extremely well deserved. And if you feel able, we would like you to say a few words.
Technically, I'm able, but yeah, no, thank you. We did this to Bob Bray last year, and I know he was struggling to speak, and similarly, I've got my heart in my mouth at the moment. So I suppose, first of all, I just really wanted to say thank you to everybody over the years. I mean, I spent nearly 20 years at Syria, and over those years, I know that a few people felt that they were alone, but I never did feel alone. I was surrounded by fantastic project teams, fantastic authors, great chairs, supportive colleagues, and also some really positive people to actually take things forward with, whether it be funders or government trying to push things forward at the time. So I just want to say thank you to them. Quite a lot of them are nominees for the previous award. So I want to thank them and also congratulate Julie. It's great to see how things have moved on in SUDS over those 20 years. And it's quite interesting to see how the different devolved countries have taken things forward. Scotland and Wales have always been at the front, and I'm hoping that the opportunities that there are for England, following on from the production of the recent document that Bridget was involved in terms of the recommendations for updating SUDS standards, means that England can hopefully leapfrog up over the other devolved countries going forward. Because I think we're now come to the stage collectively that SUDS is seen as an opportunity rather than a challenge to take things forward. So I just think it's fantastic that there's people pushing things forward in terms of trying to inspire, inform, and influence. And I think George said it before about engaging with others. The community out there is really strong and really friendly and fantastic. And over those 20 years, I've felt supported amongst everybody. So I just really want to thank everyone along that way. And also thank you, Graham. You've been there from the early meetings of the National SUDS Working Party, discussions with all the different stakeholders and dealing with the different attitudes, many of them negative when we first started, and how that's changed. So it's been good fun, but there's still an awful lot more to do going forward. And I'm really excited to see how SUDSdrain continues to grow and how Syria continues to grow. It's got some great proposals going forward in terms of BEST and looking at other opportunities to keep on promoting and informing people on the right way of delivering SUDS. So yeah, no, thank you. I am quite touched by this. I know I said I wouldn't be able to speak, but I think I've done okay. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, the boy done well. Thanks, Paul.
Cheers, everybody. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks again, Paul. The chat box has gone quite full through that item, so that in itself says quite something. We are now moving on to the Rising Star Award. We've got 6 people nominated, and these are Sarah Ali, Peter Atwood, Faye Jennard, Jamie Kukadia, Amanda Skeldon, and Fiona. I've gone and lost my place, Fiona. Sorry about this. We'll be in a second. Fiona Welch. I'm sorry, the box was over your surname. I do apologise. Now, I'm going to introduce them individually, and each candidate has a short presentation. So I will take them in the order that they've been presented there. And then following all the presentations, I'll announce the winner. So apologise again, Fiona, for that little glitch. So first of all, we start with Sarah Ali. Sarah is team leader in landscape and design at Bradford City Council. She's nominated by Professor David Lerner, who is chair of the Friends of Bradford Becht and a trustee of the Ayres Rivers Trust. Sarah has transformed organisation culture into a positive can-do one. Her drive and enthusiasm has resulted in funding being secured for numerous blue-green infrastructure and SUDS projects which the city has delivered. She's a leading player in the Begin European Union Interreg project on blue-green infrastructure, which has produced and is continuing to produce valuable web resources. Her enthusiasm has inspired the NGOs she's working with, making them more effective in their roles. So, Sarah, I invite you to present now.
Thanks, Graham, and congratulations, Julie and Paul. So you'll all remember the Boxing Day floods of 2015, and that affected the whole country, and it really changed things for me. The threat facing us was real, and it was on my doorstep, and our urban areas were experiencing heavy rainfall and flooding. All of a sudden, we had a case for flooding. Urban greening, climate adaptation, and retrofitting of SUDS within our urban landscape needed to play a key role in transforming our spaces. Over the last few years, we've been pushing for nature-based solutions and SUDS on as many of our projects as we can. And as a result, we've been able to improve our designs, and we've been able to deliver multiple benefits by working much closer together within the council, but also with our stakeholders and our community. I feel the beginning of change and the landscape by creating environments that promote greener, healthier communities and are contributing to supporting sustainable social and cultural environments, nature conservation and climate action through real meaningful collaboration. We really want to manage surface water and go as far as we can, whenever we can. It's more of a, not should we do it, but let's do it. And how can we do it? We're encouraging our communities, and especially our young children, to be more involved so that they're more aware of the impact and the solutions to climate change and flooding. We're working with various funding streams like the Transport Fund and the Lottery and several EU-related projects. And I feel being part of national and international projects has really helped us to apply a different approach and share learning and best practice from colleagues, not only in the UK, but across Europe. I think we've been able to demonstrate that SUDS is not only about flood mitigation, but has economic benefits by making our neighbourhoods more attractive, increasing biodiversity and amenity value, and contributing to improving the health and well-being. SUDS really needs to be an integral part of any new development, from the smallest play areas, simple things like footpaths, to £1 million transforming cities projects. I'd like to just say that I'm absolutely delighted and honoured to have been nominated and shortlisted, and I really already feel like a winner, that I'm able to do what I do. Bradford is an amazing place, and I work with some incredible people who are very, very supportive and help me deliver things every day. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. I'll now move on to the second person nominated, Pete Atwood. Pete is a project coordinator and lead on the Love My River project and works for Groundwork Cheshire, Lancashire and Merseyside. Pete is nominated by Joe Bradley of Stormwater Shepherds and Rachel Argyros of the Environment Agency, colleagues in the Weaver Gowie River Catchment Partnership. Pete's work has a very strong hands-on grassroots community focus, leading some good practice work with volunteers. Additionally, Pete promotes SUDS through presentations to schools, lectures to FE colleges and digital media. He's passionate that SUDS can be a means of empowering communities to take action to improve their local environment. Pete, I invite you to present for us.
Thanks, Graham. Am I on? Yeah, so thanks, Graham. I'd like to talk about our Rain Zone project, which has been a big part of my work in recent months. It's a project I've been involved in designing and delivering through Groundwork Cheshire, Lancashire and Merseyside's community team as part of our Love My River programme. We'd like to acknowledge the support of the Environment Agency through their Water Environment Improvement Fund partnership grants. The SUDS element were delivered on 3 project sites, which are on the slides that we're looking at now. And the principles of the project are all about the usual SUDS objectives of contributing to reducing the pressure of peak rainfall on the combined sewer network, to improve local river water quality, to reduce the risk of combined sewer overflows and reduce surface water flooding. Flooding is a very live issue in Northwich, having had 2 floods in the last 18 months as a result of sewer overflows. And we're looking to demonstrate and build on established best practice within the SUDS community in the UK and overseas, which is featured in serious publications, RHS, Rain Garden Advice, and especially Melbourne Water, where we've adapted their rain garden planter designs. We engage the community by creating working SUDS projects at high-profile community premises, which can raise public awareness, and by creating simple and attractive features using DIY skills and readily available materials. It's all about working with volunteers, bringing individuals' own experiences and spreading the word about what we're trying to do. And it's very much about linking in with other community programs, particularly Northwich in Bloom and the partnership that's behind that. And we're working to work with other partners towards Northwich's first Gold Award in the North West in Bloom Awards. So thanks again to all of the partners who've helped with this. Northwich Town Council for Vickersway Park, Changing Lives Together at the Cheshire Food Hub and Mid Cheshire Food Bank, and Northwich and District Youth Centre for hosting all of the project sites, and our volunteers from Grosvenor Community Garden and Crew and Vale Royal Conservation volunteers. So thank you to all the partners that have nominated me, and good luck to all the nominees. Thank you.
Thank you, Pete. We now move on to the third person nominated, Faye Gennard. Faye is founder of Gennard Consulting Limited and the World of Water web platform. Faye is nominated by Martin Riches of Martin Riches Limited, a new consultancy which is specialising in the early assessment of projects to support clients in understanding value and risk. Faye's contribution to the sector is through her consultancy, which specialises in developing SUDS drainage strategies for new developments, and through effective dissemination of information on SUDS through digital media and the World of Water platform. Faye's focus is on that essential task of getting SUDS included in the earliest stages of the design and project delivery process. So Faye, I invite you to provide your presentation to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Graham. Hello, my name is Faye Gennard and I'm the founder of Gennard Consulting Limited, which is a flood risk and drainage consultancy specialising in pre-planning. But today, I'm not going to talk to you about that side of the business, as that's not what we've been nominated for. Today, I'm going to show you how we are trying to spread the word about SUDS, as well as connect up the many professionals across our fabulous industry. You only have to look at the other Rising Star champions to see some of the amazing work that is currently going on, and I'm deeply humbled to have been nominated alongside some of the UK's leading professionals. After 10 years in the industry, however, what I started to find really challenging was how low the uptake was on SUDS, and how projects were often falling back on those traditional tanked and pipe solutions, thus losing out on so many of the benefits that we know SUDS can bring. This got me asking why. Why were more SUDS not being specified on projects? Was it down to developers not wanting to pay, or people worrying about who would adopt? What I started to discover, however, is people just didn't understand. They were still sold on the idea that drainage was all about getting water away from a site as quickly as possible, and had not yet come to the realisation that water could be used as an asset to improve their sites for the people that would live and work there. So I started to post on social media through my LinkedIn page. I wanted to try and make my posts engaging and informative. And I've run a number of series from the introduction to SUDS, the importance of early planning processes, and why you should always know your flood risk. There's been some great feedback, and other leading professionals have contributed some fantastic comments and resources in the chats. I then started doing a deeper dive by producing a number of blogs which aim to explain the concept of SUDS and floods risk in an easy way. I also try to include links on where to go if people want to know just that little bit more. Finally, this led to a number of architects and developers requesting CPDs, which I was only too happy to provide. The basis of them have always been around the pre-planning process and how thinking about your drainage strategy early is important to ensuring your projects get off to the best possible start. I am only one person, however, and like a single drop of water, the impact I can make on my own is limited. I therefore decided to set up World of Water, which is a membership site that aims to provide a space where water professionals can come to connect, share knowledge and grow. While it's still in its infancy, definitely a trickle, not a flood, it is something I want to continue to develop over the coming year. To be nominated as a Rising Star is an amazing achievement and a great way to end my first year in business. I'd just like to take the opportunity to thank you all for listening to me today, to Martin for the nomination, and wish the best of luck to all the other nominees. You are all doing truly amazing work within the SUDS community, and it is a complete honour to be nominated alongside you. Thank you.
Thank you, Faye. Now move on to the person who's fourth nomination, Jamie Kukadia. Jamie is nominated by George Warren, who was then with the Greater London Authority, and himself, as we know, our then most recent SUDS champion last year. Jamie is an engineer with the London Borough of Enfield, which has been a very active authority in SUDS for some years. An awful lot of good work has come out of Enfield. Jamie has successfully delivered numerous examples of good quality SUDS in a range of urban environments. As an ambassador, she's been successful at influencing other stakeholders to get SUDS incorporated in other urban infrastructure schemes, such as highway schemes and cycleway schemes, etc. She has a strong strong focus on community engagement in all the schemes that she undertakes. Jamie, I would invite you to provide your presentation.
Thank you, guys. So probably start from the beginning, if it works. Does it work? There we go. So in the beginning, I really worked on a really incredible project with incredibly inspiring people to try and raise awareness about the challenges that urban rivers face. And that's always really at the forefront of my mind when we're looking at SUDS and their benefits. And at Enfield Council, the best way to understand the challenges that rivers face is actually to lift the manholes or jump over fences and actually get into it. And then you really understand the water quality issues, the flooding issues. You know, they're also quite hidden away, so they're not really at the forefront, even though they're so important in our lives. So thinking about all the things that have been said today about really good above ground SUDS measures, green infrastructure SUDS measures that everyone's advocating, some of my role is trying to encourage developers to get the best SUDS, and I've been really lucky to be part of a working group for the London SUDS Pro Forma, which George Warren delivered, and I'm sure you've heard of him recently. And I've also been delivering quite a lot of different rain garden projects across the borough, along with my colleagues. So it's not just me, it's everybody that's delivering these. And this has really informed the way we approach SUDS and the way we design it. And that's kind of fed into lots of design guides, and really we want to share about our experiences and what not to do, what to do in terms of designing it. And I've really been proud to project manage quite a lot of really interesting SUDS features as well, such as rain gardens and wetlands, and take them through kind of just the inception to completion. And also really great to work with so many different types of people, so many different types of teams to integrate SUDS, push them over the edge and put loads of SUDS in their projects as well. So I guess like what I take from it and what I'm really inspired by with loads of people is just to make sure that SUDS aren't kind of one-hit wonders, that they're kind of delivered across the nation, and they're kind of delivered in loads of SUDS are delivered across the world. This is kind of not the end of it. I want to keep delivering lots of rain garden schemes, lots of wetland schemes, and do lots of river restoration. So, you know, thank you to everybody that's nominated me, that's inspired me, that's kind of stoked the fire. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Jamie. Some nice looking schemes there. Now move on to the fifth person nominated, Amanda Skeldon. Amanda is nominated by Sam Evans, Head of Natural Environment for the Greater Manchester Combined Authority. Amanda is Campaign Manager for Climate Action and Technical Lead for Ignition, an innovative funding programme for initiatives to improve the natural environment in Greater Manchester. Which aims to address climate change challenges. The Ignition website is a very impressive and powerful resource. I've had a good look at it and I'm very impressed by that. Amanda works with SUDS and with a wide range of audiences, and has a strong focus in addressing the funding challenges, which we all know are quite profound in relation to SUDS. And she also has a very strong role in championing SUDS with other stakeholders, and not least with policymakers. So Amanda, I invite you to provide us with your presentation.
Thank you so much, Graham. It's a real honour to have been nominated for this award, and I'm lucky enough to have been continuously learning from some amazing people, quite a few of whom I notice are on here and know quite how much they know and I don't about SUDS. Over the last few years as well, I've kind of stopped looking at myself as just a communications professional, which is where my background is, but I have to kind of acknowledge that I am now probably a certified SUDS geek. And I'm really privileged to be one of the technical leads on the Ignition project in Greater Manchester. Having delivered a range of projects for business in the community around natural capital and SUDS, I now work almost entirely around Ignition, which is a multi-partner project looking for innovative ways to finance SUDS and nature-based solutions. As the technical lead for stakeholder engagement on the project, I'm really lucky because I get to work with all 11 of our partners, most of whom know a lot more about SUDS and nature-based solutions than I do. And we're working to engage citizens, communities, investors, businesses, property owners, suppliers, regulators, the water industry, government. It's as broad as we can to know that we can bring everyone along with us. And I'm also working with our membership at business in the community to ensure that they understand that whilst businesses know that working towards net zero is really essential in addressing the climate crisis, it's also fundamental that they acknowledge the impacts of climate change that are already here, and that they need to incorporate resilience and adaptation into their climate action plans. And there are many ways that they can do that through green space and SUDS and nature-based solutions. Through Ignition, we've created an evidence base that pulls together existing evidence on the many benefits of varying nature-based solutions, from rain gardens to green roofs and from SUDS-enabled trees to large green spaces. And this evidence has informed a range of toolkits and reports for businesses, local authorities and investors. And last month we launched the Living Lab at Salford, where we're capturing even more data on their interconnected nature-based solutions. And we've also created a place that we know we can bring people to engage them, educate them, inspire them around the value of SUDS. So the ambition for the remaining 10 months of the project is to develop an outline business case with Finance Earth that enables investment in a pipeline of local authority properties and schools, bringing SUDS to those sites. And it will look at how installing SUDS will reduce flood risk and network pressure for United Utilities, provide savings in wastewater charging to property owners, and provide brilliant, engaging community and education spaces. So a huge thank you to my partners at Ignition and at GMCA for nominating me, and good luck to all of my fellow nominees.
Thank you, Amanda. And now the final person nominated is Fiona Welch. Fiona is a project architect and trustee for Collective Architecture, an interesting community-rooted architectural practice with an ethos going beyond good building design into architecture's role in well-being. It's natural that it embraces SUDS in its work, and where Fiona is the SUDS advocate. Fiona is nominated by Brian Darcy, a well-respected prime mover in SUDS within CPAT, someone who has been involved with SUDS even longer than myself. Fiona delivers SUDS in a range of projects and a range of scales, including many high-density schemes, and is a highly competent architect using creative solutions. She's an energetic advocate of SUDS through her wider work in lectures, presentations, and part-time teaching role. So Fiona, I'd like to invite you to provide us with your presentation.
Thanks, Graham. So I'm just going to show a few projects at different scales that we've worked on over the years. This first one is the North Glasgow Surface Water Management Strategy for Scottish Canals, which investigated previously landlocked sites that couldn't be developed. The strategy that we developed with AECOM suggested surface water could be removed from the combined sewer system, treated within landscape features and discharged to the canal, and proposed a mix of housing typologies and tenures appropriate to the local context. Several of the sites in the study are now being developed, and I'm currently working on the first phase of housing within the Hamilton Hill master plan, as well as green infrastructure works across the site. The guiding principles for the master plan at Hamilton Hill were to promote active green travel routes and remove surface water from the combined sewer network as much as possible. This water would then be stored and conveyed to the canal for discharge with visible blue-green infrastructure, minimising piped connections wherever possible. This approach has meant that landscape and infrastructure have been designed in parallel with the housing master plan, offering a technical solution to mitigate future flood risk while providing health and wellbeing benefits, attractive streets, homes and open space, and enhanced habitat networks and biodiversity. It's been positive to have landscape and open space integrated into the design from the start, and we think this will be of huge benefit to the new residents and existing community. At a smaller scale, we've recently been working on Kinross Rain Gardens Challenge for Kinross Civic Trust with Brian Darcy. A number of SUDS features exist already in Kinross. We were appointed last year to produce before and after visuals for key features on a rain gardens trail, which would highlight these existing SUDS and investigate possible improvements to enhance the trail as a walking route and connect to the existing Loch Leven Heritage Trail. A second strand to the project was to illustrate to private owners and businesses how houseboat SUDS could be retrofitted within their properties. The aspirations that some enhancers can be carried out by local volunteers and that Kinross can become a rain gardens town and a potential case study for other towns in Scotland and beyond. All these projects have been the product of enthusiastic collaboration with clients, stakeholders, landscape architects, hydrologists and engineers. It's great to have been nominated for this award, as it feels like recognition of the role architects can play within an engaged design team, taking a holistic approach to placemaking from the outset, integrating buildings, infrastructure and landscape. It's been great to see what everyone else is doing, and I'm going away feeling very inspired, and good luck to all the nominees and well done to those who've already won. Thanks.
Thanks a lot, Fiona. And we're now moving on to the actual award itself. And the award of the Rising Star goes to Sarah. Sarah, I would like to now invite you, well, congratulate you. It's a good achievement, and I am really pleased for you now as a rising star. And I'd like to invite you now to come and say a few words by way of acceptance.
God, talk about speechless. Thank you. Thanks very much. Talk about speechless. I think I know how Paul feels. I've got a lump in my throat. Gosh, thank you. Thanks to Syria, Sustrain, all the partners, judges, fellow nominees. I'm quite humbled, truly honoured that first I was shortlisted among such talented people. I want to thank everybody who voted for me and all those who've helped me on this journey. And everybody that I've worked with on these projects. It really is a team effort. I've got the privilege, I said this earlier, that I work with some incredible people, not just my team, but all the partners, the community who kind of push us to be more ambitious and be innovative and try and help us to deliver so much better in Bradford. And I want to give a special thanks to Professor Lerner. He has been quite inspirational, and he's always there sort of pushing us. I want to thank my team, They work really hard in Bradford and helped me deliver these projects, and they never said no. My colleagues and partners for continuing to support me. Thank you all very much. It really, really means a lot to me.
Thanks, Sarah. Congratulations again, and I'm sure you said as much, that the award is for Bradford as well as you, but very well done. Congratulations. Well, that brings us to the end of the awards. So I would say again, congratulations to all the winners. I think I said at the beginning, and I think I should repeat it now, for those who didn't win, being recognised and nominated for an award by your peers should be taken as a significant achievement in itself. And I hope that everyone will take that on board. The majority of people have said that in their presentations, and I think that was it was really good to hear it. Seriously, that's being recognised by your peers does actually inspire, and I'm glad that everybody understands that. I think I'd like to summarise what have been the key messages as I've read them from today. The SUDS community over the last 4 or 5 years even has grown immensely. And I think this was reflected in the breadth of the nominations that were received and the challenge of the shortlisting process as well. And the recipients of the awards. Scale of the community. We talked about scale of SUDS, but we can talk about scale of the SUDS community now. It is immensely bigger, a lot more people involved, a lot more talent, and an awful lot more going on, and an awful lot more good SUDS work going on. We've also seen, above all, that the SUDS champions are excellent ambassadors who raise the profile of SUDS. And I think that's been essential. The nature of society in Britain, it isn't a top-down hierarchical governed society. It is about brokering solutions across a broad range of stakeholders. Everything in public life in a modern country is about that. And that does require a lot of inputs and time, dedication, skills, interpersonal skills, and immense knowledge of the subject, so that one can present a robust case for why things need to be done in a new way. There's still lots to do, and I hope collectively we can ensure that SUDS reach their full potential and really do deliver multiple benefits, because we do face an immense climate change challenge. And SUDS is one of the most useful tools we've got in our toolbox. So I think those are the main messages I have taken from today. I'd like to thank the organisers again for doing such a good job. Thank the judges for all their hard work in shortlisting the nominees. Certainly would like to thank the nominees again. I'm mega impressed by the scale and extent of good work that's going on. And I'd also like to thank again SUDStrain partners and supporters, because they are in at the foundations of what we're doing. I'll now pass over to Louise to close the session for today.
Thanks, Graham. Thanks for doing a fantastic job of chairing the awards today. Thanks everyone for joining us for the awards. Congratulations to all the nominees, those shortlisted, and of course the worthy winners. We'll send on prizes to the winners and certificates, as well as shortlisted and winners logos for you to use on your email signatures. Thanks also to Chrissy, Ian and George for sharing your experiences with everyone today. Please continue to use the SUDStrain resources and to keep in contact with us about the brilliant work that's been going on. And as Graham said, thank you to our SUDStrain partners and supporters for our ongoing programme of research and webinars, without whom today wouldn't have been possible. So thanks everyone.